The game is changing in a big way, man. The gatekeepers don't control the gates, and the powers that be aren't as powerful. I say that to say that, like, you don't need mainstream media outlets, like the big TV looks or the magazine covers per se. It's like print isn't what print was 10 years ago, and TV ratings aren't what they were 10 years ago. And social media certainly isn't what it was 10 years ago. It's like the power is shifting. And what that does is that takes the power from the gatekeeper and puts it in the hands of the creatives. You gotta be dope. You gotta find an audience. You gotta, reach that audience with your identity, with your message, with, your creativity. And it's actually shifting to a build it and they will come for the first time. It's like, and you just see the death of superstar, and you see the birth of all these like self-made stars. My measure of success, was being able to make ends meet, to pay rent, to get food, to continue to create, and then buy the tools and the time needed to create. Not via a 9-to-5, but via the creativity, paying for itself, coming full circle, making a career out of what I love to do. That was success to me. Then you make it there and then you're like, all right, what's next? Where do we go from here? And you just, you fall in love with the climb, and it becomes addicting, and you want to continue. It all starts with the music. But then it reaches out to the music videos, the visual experience, the track art, to the merchandise, like the T-shirts, the hats, the whatever, to the live show, and partnering with brands and doing collaborations and stuff like that. It's all you want to build it past and build it beyond, and try to take over the world. When you're from the Bay Area, there's this chip on your shoulder that you kind of inherently grow up with. You feel like the underdog, because us as a region, we've been overlooked, honestly, in the grand scheme of the history of the genre, of the culture. A lot of the slang, a lot of the style, like a lot of that originated in the Bay Area, but you don't think of the Bay when you think of Atlanta, you think of New York. You think of LA, like you think of Chicago, like main, like meccas of the culture of hip hop. So, we just kind of grow up with this inherent duty to spread love and put on and reach back home and always show love, and just represent where we're from and tell our story. We've had superstars, but again, I feel like the Bay Area has been overlooked, in the long run, in the history of the last 30 years or so. But you got superstars. You can't deny E40. E40 is one of the biggest faces in hip-hop history. Too Short the same. It's like you can't deny what they've done. Mac Dre, rest in peace, like he was on the brink of finally breaking through to the world, when that happened. So it's like you look back at certain events and say, what if? But I just want to carry on tradition, and take it as far as I can take it. The way I was taught growing up is to always remember who you are, always remember where you're from, no matter what changes. And as this music stuff starts to take off, never forget, where the origins of where it came from and who you are in your bones. That's just who I am as a person, is to, not turn my back on that. So that's in me, in my DNA, in any partnership, any business deal, any record deal, any whatever. It's like, we're gonna do this the way I believe in. And so working with a major label with this album, I was like, guys, just trust me. I didn't get this far by accident. Let me do it how I know to do it, and let me give you this album the way I know how to give it to you. And we really just went in and we did our homework, and we didn't leave the studio for like 7 months straight. And we set our vision, we set our mission, and we went out and tried to accomplish it. I think it all comes down to knowing who you are, knowing what you want to achieve, what you want to say, how you want to say it, and that style, that's aesthetic, that's concept, that's idea. And everybody doesn't have that. You know, everybody doesn't have the technique that takes years to develop, and the idea that takes time to cultivate, and the whole, you know, style that takes time to put together. It's like you really got to have it all figured out in your head to have the confidence to say, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, and this is where I'm going to take it. And you know, I feel like that's important in any art form, in any business, in any venture. You know, it's just having a vision, it's having goals, and having an idea of how you're gonna get there. The definition of success is subjective. You know, it's not necessarily like definitive. Like if you get to this point, you're by definition successful. You set the definition yourself. You know, if it's making $1 million, if it's making $10 million, if it's, you know, playing a show for 1,000 people, if it's playing a show for 20,000 people, you know, if it's selling 10 million records, you got to have your own idea what that means to you, and it can evolve. It doesn't have to be one benchmark. I think it's a way of living. If you want to be successful day to day, you know, you wake up every day with a certain attitude, a certain worldview and perspective, and you decide how you want to, you know, approach the world. I think you have to credit any growth I've had to being addicted to it. Because if you don't, you know, want to better yourself every day and want to continue to grow every day, you know, and you're going to have big productive days, you're going to have, you know, frustrating days, whether that's creatively or hitting a wall and any kind of, you know, whatever. You got to be hungry, and you got to want it, and you got to know the process. You got to work smart. You can't just work hard.